through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch the scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Anti-Media Radio. Once again with your host Nick Bernabe here on ucy.tv and the antimedia.org/radio. Thank you all for tuning in. Super happy to be back and, breaking down all this crazy news nonsense and propaganda and, truth and all the different things going on politically, geopolitically, domestically, the cops with code access pipelines, all stuff we've been covering for months and years now. There's positive signs, there's negative signs, there's things that need to continue to be worked on. There's all kinds of stuff going on. We're about to usher in a new era of the Trump presidency, and he's got his bandwagon of mindless followers that now blindly support everything Trump is doing, whether it's the media frenzy yesterday of meeting with Kanye West, which was as I said, a media frenzy, and basically, I don't know, to me it's not newsworthy, but apparently for NBC and CBS and Perez Hilton and all the tabloid journalism out there, which would include basically all the mainstream people, it was big time news. But bigger issues with Trump, I mean, God, he's filling his cabinet up with ExxonMobil, Goldman Sachs. I mean, these are the swamp people that were supposed to be getting drained out of Washington, D.C., according to Trump's campaign promises. Now he's becoming swamp man himself. I mean, his cabinet's starting to look worse than Obama's. His cabinet is starting to look like Hillary Clinton won the presidency. And his supporters are going around on our page on the anti-media. I mean, come on, guys. We're not partisan media. We're not partisan activists around here. We're not choosing Republicans over Democrats or saying there's a lesser of the two evils. There isn't. But we've developed a lot of Trump followers on our Facebook page because we came out so hard against Hillary Clinton. Well, there was a lot to come out hard against with Hillary Clinton. She's a horrible, horrible person. She's done a lot of really bad things. She's run a very corrupt political career. So of course we came out hard against Hillary Clinton. We also came out hard against Trump. But now we got a bunch of his followers on our page commenting on every single post that says anything negative about Trump and say, oh, you guys are just a bunch of leftists. You sold out. You're this, you're that. No, dude, you haven't been paying attention for the last 3 years that we've been criticizing both parties, unfortunately. But anyway, what we're dealing with here is the same exact issue that we dealt with for 8 years with Obama. Obama was elected as an anti-war candidate who had this awesome movement of people that were like ready to stop the wars. And yeah, we're going to stop the war in Iraq. We should have never been there in the first place. Blah, 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 blah. 8 years later, Obama has bombed like 8 to 10 different countries. Where are his voters? Where are the Obama Democrats out there in the streets rallying against all of these wars? Where are they at? I'll tell you where they're at. They're in the same place the Donald Trump supporters are when he announced that he's putting Goldman Sachs in his cabinet. They're both sitting in the same place on their couch right now, next to each other, pretending like they're different. That's where they're at. And that's what's pissing me off, dude. Like, people don't have any principles. You could vote for a guy and still hold him accountable. Or you could not vote for a guy like I did and still hold him accountable. You don't have to say, well, just because I voted for the guy, he can do whatever he wants. He could burn people up in concentration camps. I voted for him. I can't criticize him. But you know what? This mentality does kind of make sense. It's kind of like what George Carlin said about voting. You know, if you vote for these assholes, you got no right to complain about them, right? I don't know. Maybe I'm off. I didn't vote for him, therefore I'm going to complain all I want. And, you know, I know a lot of people listening to the show tonight probably didn't vote for Trump. Maybe there are some people listening that did just because they did, or maybe because they thought he was a lesser of two evils. But he's not. He's not. You know, maybe there's people that run that maybe they think they're going to be lesser of two evil. Maybe Trump thinks he's going to go up there and do that. Maybe Obama thought he was going to go up there and do that as well. But there's a bigger reality there, which is, you know, you got to deal with much bigger forces than one person. The military-industrial complex comes to mind. The bigger picture, the deep state, what many people used to call, like, you know, the New World Order and all that stuff. I mean, the new going term for them is the deep state. You know, there's a much bigger picture than a politician getting elected saying he's going to go in there and change stuff. Now, with Trump, obviously, as we can already tell from the people he's surrounding himself with, Goldman Sachs, Exxon, a bunch of neocon war hawks, you know, these aren't people that are in any way, shape, or form anti-establishment. They're in no way, shape, or form common sense on foreign policy. They're in no way, shape, or form good on civil liberties. I mean, he's nominating Jeff Sessions for Attorney General. The guy thinks that smoking weed is is only for bad people. And, you know, I mean, just more and more of the same old shit, you know, continue the drug war, continue the police state, continue the empire, continue the banking elite running the show. That's Trump. That's Trump. That's the swamp. He didn't drain it. He's just replacing it with a whole new set of faces that work for the same people. And, you know, he's making the swamp worse. He's draining it of the water and filling it with oil. You know, and then now he's announcing Rick Perry for Secretary of Energy. I mean, how much dumber can you get? Rick Perry, come on now. He in 2012, he ran on a platform of getting rid of the Department of Energy, and now he's going to be in charge of it. In the debate, he couldn't even remember what it was called. You guys remember that when he was debating and Ron Paul put out that plan, was how he was going to get rid of 5 different departments of the government, of the federal government. And then Rick Perry came out like a couple weeks later, like, well, I'm going to get rid of 3 departments of the government. The only problem is I can't remember what they were called when he was in the debate. Just hilarious shit, dude. But man, I just hope anybody supporting that voted for Trump out there listening tonight. I mean, God, guys, don't make the same mistake that the Obama people made, where you literally put your head in the sand for 8 years and pretend like everything's okay. It's not. It's not. Anyway, rant over. Let's get the show started. I got my awesome longtime co-host on the show, DB Schwartz. What's up, man?
Hey, dude, just trying to sift through this endless wave of propaganda with the Syria basically loss. I'm gonna just call it for what it is. The basically bankers lost. they lost, and that's why they lost the election, because they couldn't get people to get behind a war effort, had to rely on mercenaries, and then their funding dried up and they couldn't pay them anymore, and then the dudes ran like the rats they were. So I don't know if today's a good day or not, man. I see a hydra in our midst. I see one side the military, the other side bankers. They're both bad in their own way. The military, I think, is winning and is going to win. I think what's going on right now is a honey trap. I really caution anybody that's speaking out about doing anything stupid to prevent the election from going forward like it did, because I promise you they're going to wait for the wrong people to do the wrong things and make them go away. It's what's happened throughout history. So I just caution everybody. We're at the very, very beginning of a hurricane right now. That's all. That's what I'm starting to see here.
Good assessment, dude. I don't dispute that at all. I definitely see a power struggle going on internally between the government, plus all the other external things going on. One thing I forgot to mention during my rant about Rick Perry is that he's also a board member of Energy Transfer Partners, which is the parent company that's building the Dakota Access Pipeline, and so.
And it's all about energy sovereignty, Nick. It's just so we can get off of the teat of Saudi Arabia, keep the military going. I guess we'll trade China this dirty oil for whatever the hell they're going to give us, and we'll, I don't know, buy someone else's oil or take over Antarctica or something. I don't know what we're going to do, but they're just pivoting, man. They're getting out of the Middle East, Europe theater. They're going over to Asia because they think that's way more valuable, and they're probably right, and it's way more of a threat, and they're probably right.
Yeah, and I wrote about this on Monday. I think we talked about it a bit. Trump is now stoking up tension with China. And now over the course of the election, we talked a lot about how Hillary Clinton was dangerously stoking tensions with Russia. And of course, that's still going on right now with the media blaming pretty much everything on Russia and Putin. I mean, you could like stub your toe and you could blame it on Russia at this point. Everything is like Russia's fault. Hillary lost the election because of Russia. The news is messed up because of Russia. Fake news is coming out because of Russia. People are getting hacked because of Russia. My toilet paper roll in my bathroom is empty because Russia, obviously. But on a more serious note, I mean, Russia is run by Putin, who is a very, very smart, shrewd leader that has very limited resources. I mean, their economy is about 1/8 the size of the U.S.'s economy. Their military is a fraction of the size of our military, but they use what they have much smarter than we do. And therefore, they've outmaneuvered the United States in the Middle East in many different aspects. But again, Russia is Russia, and the only thing they really have outside of being smart with their resources and being cunning is this big, giant nuclear arsenal that really can't be used unless we're talking about all-out nuclear apocalypse type scenario. Therefore, Russia is kind of limited on its options. On the other hand, Trump stoking up this stuff with China is a much, much more serious scenario than the whole thing with Clinton wanting to take on Russia. Now that was dangerous too. That really is a really dangerous situation that is still could end up popping off. It's looking less and less like anything big is going to happen between the U.S. and Russia because, as you've probably seen, and what we're gonna talk about this tonight as well, is the Russian-backed Syrian government is pretty much winning, or you can't say they've won the Syrian civil war, but they're winning. They've taken Aleppo back, which was the big city that really was the last really strategic stronghold that the U.S.-backed opposition was in control of, and the Russian-backed Syrian government has pretty much won that battle, and that more or less puts the Syrian civil war to bed. There's still going to be little fights in smaller villages and towns and stuff, but it's pretty much it. The U.S. tried to go in there for couple years now and try to foment this revolution and try to oust Assad, and they've even been doing airstrikes and stuff under the guise of fighting ISIS. But the reality of the situation, anyone that really knows what's happening over there knows that the true goal is to try to regime change the Syrian government. That's not going to happen. It's not happening anymore, guys. It's not. The U.S. lost that, and that's also why we see so much propaganda now coming out of Aleppo. And I'm not going to say it's not absolutely horrible over there for the people, but these reports of whole families committing suicide and just genocide and people being massacred for no reason by their own government, those reports are probably propaganda.
They're partisan. And here's the thing, Nick, if something like this happened in the US where, I don't know, let's just say a bunch of pissed off Democrats tried to start an insurrection and because of the Trump whole thing, and then after a couple years their cities finally fall, their sanctuary cities fall, or whatever scenario you want to put it, do you really think that those people would go quietly to the opposition? I mean, the civilians themselves in eastern Aleppo are probably fighting the government. So, yeah, there's going to be casualties and civilians are intermixed with tons of ISIS guys. And if you look at who's putting out the videos that are supposedly getting out on the internet in this place where there's no infrastructure, it's all guys. It's all fighting age males. I'm a doctor. I'm a lawyer. I'm a white hat. I'm a former rebel, blah, 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 blah. No, you're not. You're all ISIS. I mean, this stuff is so staged and so psyoped at this point. And it's kind of sad I see it. Maybe I'm starting to see things that aren't even there. Who knows? But, man, this stuff looks so contrived and so fake. I really just can't believe it.
Yeah, a lot of it is propaganda. And again, I'm not going to say that people aren't suffering there. Of course they're suffering. And there's probably innocent people dying, getting caught up as collateral damage in this fight between the opposition and the government.
But it truly was like the Sunnis and the Shias, were trying to dislodge the minority Alawite, who it would be like, I don't even know what would be a good parallel, but imagine some sect of Christianity or something like the Jesuits just openly took over the U.S. and they marginalized the rest of the population. And everybody else in the U.S. was Christian, and they were the wrong kind of Christian. I mean, that's basically what was happening in Syria. Everybody else except this minority sect that was the elite was the wrong kind of Muslim, the wrong kind of Islam. So it wasn't really like a civil war so much as they were trying to dislodge this guy because he was unpopular and he ruled by might and fear. I mean, he was a dictator, a classic Middle East dictator. The problem is he's backed by Russia. Now, Saddam had no backing. Gaddafi had no backing, you know what I mean? But look, Yemen, they have the backing of Iran, and that's too much for Saudi Arabia and the U.S. So really, if we're fighting in other people's backyards, we're doing it strictly to keep the money train going. We cannot win these wars. They are impossible for us to win.
Yeah, just super, super complex. And this is one of the things that we wrote about today on Aleppo, on the Anti-Media, the title of the article, and I definitely recommend going and checking it out. Why everything we're hearing about Aleppo right now could be wrong. Here's the thing. There basically aren't any independent journalists left in Aleppo. The place has become so dangerous. There's reports both of the Syrian government and the rebels just killing or holding civilians hostage. There was a report a while back about this, Syrian rebel group, and this journalist from the UK was like, wait, that's the same guy that kidnapped me and held me for ransom. And he was like the center of a story that was trying to paint these rebels as some kind of moderate force. And this journalist in the UK was like, hold on, guys, that guy kidnapped me and held me hostage. Here's the issue about all the information coming out of Aleppo. As you said, DB, it's partisan. You're either getting statements from the rebels, which are U.S., Pentagon, CIA-backed, Saudi Arabia-backed, Qatari-backed rebels, or you're getting information from the Syrian government, which is Russian-backed, Iranian-backed. And we get these two completely different stories coming out, because what you read on the New York Times or the Washington Post is that people are now leaving their last messages. They're completely sure they're going to be killed and raped and slaughtered by the Syrian government, and that, it's just they'd rather commit suicide than be, ruled by Assad. And on the other hand, you see RT showing videos of the people in Aleppo dancing around in the streets, parading, shooting off fireworks, and they're so happy that Aleppo has been liberated by the Syrian government. But obviously the truth falls somewhere in between, right? As you said, Assad is a minority Shia sect ruler. And of course, they say he was secular and that he was, friendly to all religions. And yeah, there was a pretty big Christian minority in Syria that flourished. In fact, it's probably one of the oldest places where Christians have been continuously practicing anywhere in the world. And so, he was relatively secular. But again, the Sunnis, which make up a huge chunk of the population over there, felt marginalized. And that's where the organic support for the Syrian revolution comes from, is from the Sunni base. And in Iraq, I think it's even more strong because the Iraqi government was not secular. They were a Shia government that was actually really bad to the Sunnis. And therefore, the ISIS movement in Iraq is much more organic than what is going on in Syria, I believe. And that's why ISIS was able to gain so much territory in Iraq so quickly, because the bunch of those northern cities are all Sunni, and they fell like dominoes. I mean, the people in Mosul, for instance, which is a huge northern city in Iraq that is majority Sunni, I mean, ISIS took over that city with like 10,000 fighters, and it's a city of like over 500,000 people, and there was a huge Iraqi army presence there, and they just fled. They just ran off and left like $1 billion worth of weapons behind and a huge cache of gold at the central bank, and they left all kinds of stuff behind because I think the population, not only was it ISIS, but the entire population had turned on them.
Hey Nick, how many do you think are embedded here? In all honesty, I mean, seriously, do you think there's 100,000 here? Do you think they could take over 5 key cities and take a police force out? So, see, here's the thing, man. If we ever allow the government to disarm us, the exact same shit will happen here. I promise you on that.
What do you mean, like ISIS fighters that have?
Oh yeah, they're fully embedded here, man. Not only them, but there's a huge Chinese army on the southern border. So I'm just saying, man, if you want to defeat major countries, if you want to defeat Europe and America, you have to invade them. You can't just fight them. I mean, fighting us look what happens every time. I mean, it's just aerial bombardment nonstop until you just submit. So there's no way to fight our military. You have to just take us out from within. I mean, that's the only thing left. That's basically the big setup of what's going on right now. We had a whole bunch of people inside that had like infiltrated and were basically traitors, and they're going to get rooted out by the military because, like you said last episode, Nick, talk to a Marine. What do they want to do? They want to defend their family and friends. And I don't care like what other issues they have going on. Like that's the mindset of the military. Like they're not going to be used and abused for more than 15 years already before finally like they see the light and see, look, dude, we're pawns. Like basically the Pentagon and Russia are against the CIA right now. Like you have to think about it like that right now. That's what's going on. So there's all these proxies and mercenaries embedded within the U.S. I mean, if the grid ever goes down, it'd be by sabotage. No one would ever EMP the U.S. because that would be a nuclear retaliation. So, just you got to see what's coming, man. It's a big setup on its way. It's crazy shit.
Yeah, I don't know about the amount of infiltration of ISIS that's made over here. I mean, I guess there's maybe, I don't know, 1,000 guys that are friendly.
I think there's 100,000 guys here, dude. Seriously.
Yeah, it's hard to gauge. I mean, they don't even know how many ISIS fighters are over there in Iraq and Syria. The initial count was like 20,000, and then it had gone up to 50,000. They don't know. Nobody really knows. And again, ISIS is one of those creatures. ISIS is a creature of U.S. policy, whether direct or indirect. And the fact cannot be disputed that had it not been for our policies in Iraq with getting rid of Saddam Hussein, ISIS would never exist. I mean, there was zero Al Qaeda in Iraq before we went and toppled the government. Al Qaeda came in there to take advantage of the vacuum we created and to capitalize on anti-U.S. sentiment that the people organically started feeling during the occupation.
Nick, it's like you have that biotech background, and it's like they make a GMO crop, and then all of a sudden there's this brand new superbug that pops up. Well, guess what happens when you half-ass war, when you don't actually do it for the right reasons? The only reason ever is for a reason to be a saving grace to a civilization under genocidal attack. That's the only time it ever makes sense to mobilize your own population to save other people.
Self-defense, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's obvious. I mean, that's not even war at that point. That's just self-defense. So, we're doing it. We're going over there. We're not really going to war, Nick. We're just killing people and taking resources. And then the parasites that come up from that are brand new Al-Qaedas forever.
And I'll tell you what, there's one group of people, there's several groups, but there's one group that really, really benefits from a forever Al-Qaeda. And that's the defense contractors, the military-industrial complex. They make a lot of money every time there's a new boogeyman. And I'll tell you when they lost a lot of money. They lost a lot of money when the Cold War ended. And they said, oh, shit. The government no longer has a reason to keep building up a bunch of these useless weapons, billions and trillions of dollars worth of nuclear weapons and other kinds of high-tech stuff when we had no more enemy, no more formidable enemy. And it wasn't until, the U.S. had its adventures in Iraq before, but it wasn't until 9/11 where they were like, okay, guys, time to sell them this new package of propaganda so that we could rebuild this, military budget, and we're going to call it terrorism, and we got to start a war on terrorism, which is an idea. So therefore, we can never actually beat it, and it's brilliant if you look at it. I mean, if I was a person in a business and I could sell someone a product that would be used forever because they'd never be able to actually use it to defeat whatever it is they were trying to do. I mean, I'm having trouble drawing any kind of
Well, how can you defeat it, dude? You can't defeat an ideology. That's like a virus. How do you wipe out a virus? You put in antibiotics that basically destroys your entire immune system, and then you bounce back. Is that basically what we're coming to the consensus that's what needs to be done? That cultures that get in our way, that present a resistance to a natural resource we want to acquire to continue the capitalist fascist system going, that's where we're going to go. We could have turned to space travel so long ago. There must be something blocking us. That's all I can think, because all the money we spend on killing each other, we could have traveled. We could have at least started to begin terraforming Mars and getting that ready to colonize. I mean, if we're going to dump billions and trillions of dollars into something, why don't we get Planet B ready? I mean, that would have been worthy. And let us fight on that planet and save Earth. I mean, this is just the stupidest stuff I've ever seen. We're literally wasting every resource we have for the future to destroy each other now.
Yeah, you're right, man. It's ridiculous. And, there is a way to defeat terrorism, and you defeat it by removing the reason why it exists. And this is something that you'd have to go back and listen to Ron Paul or maybe some of these CIA whistleblowers that have come out and said, okay, guys, here's what's really going on.
Bill Cooper.
We're over there actually creating terrorism by existing there and by bombing their people. The only way we could stop the terrorism is by stop being over there and stop bombing them, and then they'd stop having a reason to exist. I mean, ISIS wanted the United States to go over there back into Iraq and to start sending people in there because that's how they got bigger. You can't have terrorism if you don't got a recruiting tool. You can't recruit people for something that has no cause. The only way we give them a cause is by bombing their people, invading their countries, or taking their resources. And we've developed entire countries that are going to perpetually hate us unless we make like legitimate concessions, legitimate apologize, and actually make it right. I mean, look at Iran. Look what we've done to that country. For 100 years, the West has been manipulating them, toppling their governments, undermining their institutions, all because we wanted their oil. And every time that there's been any major thing that happened in Iraq was because the government in charge started saying, you know what, we're not going to give you guys our oil anymore. And then all of a sudden it's like, Iran needs a new government, guys. They hate freedom. That's what we did back in the 50s. We installed a dictator. After they had a democratically elected government, we installed a U.S. and British-friendly dictator so that we can get their oil. And that's why Iran does not like us. They don't. The people of Iran don't hate American people. The people of Iran don't like the U.S. government because of what we've done to them. If we made it right, if we apologize, and if we stop meddling in their affairs, we could probably have a nice, healthy economic relationship with Iran with mutual trust, and we could all be friends and we could all be prosperous together. We can go travel back and forth, and we'd all be, great best friends. I've met plenty of Iranian people that are the nicest people in the world. That's not going to happen until legitimate concessions and apologies are made and we make it right. Right? I mean, it's common sense.
Yeah, it's like in the 70s we did have that, especially during that brief shining 4 years with Carter, where they were secular, and then of course the Shah came in. We installed them, of course, just to break them up, to again for oil, like you said, and for power. And it's so much more deep rooted too, because in all honesty, the descendants that run our country, Nick, and the descendants that run Iran are Babylon and Persia. I mean, if you really break it down and follow the royal family trees. So we're talking about what, maybe like 200 BC. These people have been at each other, and we just happen to have been born in an arm of one of the empires, Nick. And Iran is what's left of the other empire. That's how beaten down the Persian Empire has been over the centuries. So they're about on the losing side, of course, until they agreed that Russia had to come to their aid. So we're getting into a new axis and a new ally situation, just like 70 years ago.
Interesting times, man. Interesting times. And, as many similarities Trump has with the current regime, there are some differences, especially on foreign policy. As we talked about on Monday on our show, is Trump is building a hugely militarized cabinet with a bunch of generals and military brass filling key positions. And we talked about this, and this is something that you've been talking about, DB, for a while here, is this kind of internal struggle between the military elite and the banking elite, which, was, Hillary Clinton was kind of the banking elite candidate backed by the CIA, and Trump was kind of the military elite candidate backed by the Pentagon. And this is one of the predictions, I think, that you've made that is starting to come very true. And it's playing out right now with all this Russia talk and how the CIA is trying to pin Russia on this stuff, but the FBI and some of the other bureaucracies are saying, well, not so fast. We don't know about that.
Nick, I'm sorry to interrupt, man, but one agency's word will determine the fate of our nation, and they haven't made a decision yet, and that's the NSA. And I just want to expound on a theory of mine about the military versus the bankers. I believe that two agencies basically are at odds right now. The old agency is the bankers and the CIA, and the new one is the NSA and the military. And why do I say the new one? Because with all the new tech and all the new surveillance, there's like a new power. That stuff didn't exist before, but now the Snowdens of the world are extremely powerful. They're probably more powerful than the bankers of the world are. And if they have the backing of the military, because the military men have decided that this Pizzagate crap and the pedo rings are to be dealt with and eliminated, well, here you have the power struggle for ideological reasons, but also strictly for human ones, because one power group is stronger than the other now, and the tables have flipped. So we're on the roller coaster. But this gives humanity an opportunity to see the curtain come up and to make a decision for themselves too. Like if a big war does pop off and we decide we don't want anything to do with it, it's possible we could just finally break free.
Yeah, and I think you're right on the fact that the military guys are sick and tired of being used as just a doormat for the intelligence community and for geopolitics. You know, they're tired of going over to places like Iraq and toppling governments without having a clear reason or a clear strategy as far as what's going to happen there when it's over or why it's happening to begin with. And one thing that was really encouraging to me was all these veterans that went up to Standing Rock that decided enough is enough. We're not going to allow these militarized police to come crack down on our own, brothers and sisters in North Dakota. And that to me is pretty telling because it shows the mindset of many of the people that are either in or have been in the military is that they're not buying the bullshit no more. They're not buying that we're going to go beat up our own, let alone, in Iraq or around the world in Libya or elsewhere. We're not going to allow our government to beat up our own people for an oil company. And so maybe there is a big time awakening in the military or maybe just a shift in consciousness, or maybe the internet is allowing these guys, these active duty military guys to realize, oh crap, man, like a lot of the wars they have us going and fighting in aren't really legit. I mean, we're not protecting American freedom like they said we were. We're actually going out there and, I don't know, securing resources for ExxonMobil or somebody like that.
And we're making ourselves weaker, Nick, because how overextended are we right now? It's ridiculous. We need to be back here making our borders iron tight and secure for us, dude, just to make ourselves safe, not going and killing people randomly for no reason. We have so many resources in the U.S. that everything we're doing right now is just straight up exploitation.
Yeah, and here's the thing that's going to be a big question: is the military going to buy into what seems to be Trump's expansion of Obama's quote unquote pivot to Asia? Because that's what's going on right now. Is as you mentioned, the attention is shifting away from the Middle East because the U.S. mostly due to fracking, I guess you could say, has become energy independent for the most part. We don't really need to import oil anymore. In fact, we're now, I think, the largest oil producer in the world. And we're only rivaled by Russia and Saudi Arabia, and to a lesser extent, Iran. Now that oil has become less and less of a major geopolitical factor, and that is probably what explains the recent shift away from Saudi Arabia. And there was news just yesterday about how we're cutting off a arms shipment to Saudi Arabia because of what they're doing in Yemen, which, by the way, we're still helping them do as far as supporting them with intelligence and infrastructure for the war in Yemen. The media doesn't really talk about it, but it's basically what's going on in Aleppo right now. That's also going on in Yemen, but probably worse, because I just read a report today that 1 in 10 or one child dies every 10 minutes in Yemen. Many cases from starvation. The U.S.-backed coalition has been blowing up food systems, farms, food production facilities over there. They're weaponizing food and water. Very sad what's going on. It's unbelievable. But it's going to be interesting to see if the military brass and the military active duty people are going to buy this pivot to Asia, because now we're saying, okay, maybe with Trump we're going to not provoke Russia because it's not so big to provoke Russia anymore, because the entire thing with Syria and all this stuff going on in that region, in Iraq and Syria, was a lot of it had to do with these pipeline wars and how we were going to cut Russia out of the oil sales to Europe, and Russia wouldn't stand for that because then their economy would go to shit. Now that stuff is becoming irrelevant because now oil is starting to become less and less of a factor. Now the idea is, okay, let's not worry so much about Russia. And as you can see, Trump does not really worry about Russia at all. Now we have to worry about China, and that's the big, move here. And Obama has outlined that plan for several years now. Obama has been talking about pivot to Asia, and they've been repositioning a bunch of Navy over surrounding China and stuff like that. And now Trump is really provoking China, and that's to me is the bigger story here. Is what's going to happen under the Trump administration. It's going to be the U.S. going head to head with China.
But Nick, I think we kind of always knew it was a devil's deal one way or another. If we can ally with Russia, possibly we can stack the deck so far that China just has to come to the negotiating table and we'll rearrange the world economy. They'll get a bigger bite because they deserve one. Russia will get a bigger bite. They deserve one. And in a way, that whole country alliance that Orwell warned us about that would usher in a one world government would solidify. And I believe in some ways that may be what they're thinking. Instead of an all-out war, it becomes a straight-up intimidation, bullying tactic. And if China says no, well, then there's just Russia and the U.S. versus China, which is, of course, a complete shit show for the whole world, and we got to prevent that. But the real way to do it is just make it, known again, just like the reason why I could never support Hillary, besides that she's an awful person and has a horrible history, is that she would lead us into a war with Russia, it has to go nuclear. You have to understand wars between superpowers cannot stay conventional because one side would win and the loser would launch. See, they'd have to, because otherwise they'd become overrun and then it'd become a regime change and they'd all die. So why not just take the whole planet down too, right? Because they're all psychopaths at the top. So the way to do it is to come to some kind of tri-balance between the three superpowers, because there really are three superpowers. Sure, we're on top, but we all have different strengths and all bring something to the table. Nobody wants to fight nobody wants to fight anybody else, man. I mean, if we want to save the human race and actually get into space, we have to prevent those three countries from fighting at all costs.
Exactly, dude. We need to buy our time, and of course, it's a super alliance between U.S., Russia, and China that dominates everybody, every other small country around the world. That isn't ideal. That's definitely not ideal. But in the end, that itself will prevent the worst case scenario, which is a big nuclear war between one, two, or three of those powers.
But we've got to make sure we control it. And because we're really the only free country of the three, I mean, truly, we're the only one that can even have a radio show like this, Nick. The youth of the U.S., man, you guys have got to lead. Anybody listening that can hack and shit like that and change things from the inside, we're really the only chance for humanity.
Yeah, and, the key here is to buy our time as we continue our evolution here, as a civilization, because I think over time, eventually there's always the yin and the yang. There's always the fascism versus the freedom fight that's going on, and one could argue that the fascism side has the upper hand at the moment, but we've got the tools. The tools for freedom exist, and it's only a matter of time before we can really get them organized and working well. So we have to buy our time. We have to prevent a huge war and allow us time to evolve and gain more and more personal autonomy and personal freedom through technology, so that we can have a more, a world that's more decentralized and broken down closer to the idea of self-government. Because obviously this idea of super states and empires and just huge countries, super powerful countries, it's actually detrimental to the human experience. I mean, governments have killed more people than anything else outside of maybe mosquitoes. Mosquitoes kill a lot of people every year, but human causes, governments kill most people. And so as we evolve and finally gain access to information that we didn't have access before thanks to the internet, people can read about history and read about true history and start incorporating that into their decision making in the future and their lifestyles. so that we can start getting rid of this idea that we have to have these huge, powerful central governments to tell everyone what to do or to tax us for half of our income or to take our money and use it to bomb people around the world. You know, we can use information that we're gathering now and exposing this corrupt, you know, the corruption around the world now, and use that in the future to apply it to our decision making, and then we can have a more evolved, more, you know, peaceful world that is focused on things that are much more important than dropping bombs in Syria or Iraq or starting up a war with Russia, and something like you said, maybe reaching outside of our planet, outside of our solar system, peacefully traveling around space and doing things that are going to ensure the survival of our species and things like that. These are all things that will be possible, but first we have to prevent the next world war, because as a quote that's attributed to Einstein, of course people say it's misattributed, it doesn't matter, it's still true. You know, it was said that he said that I don't know what World War III will be fought with, what weapons World War III will be fought with, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. And basically what he's saying is, like, the technology exists, and this was back in the day when Einstein was still alive. The technology exists today to wipe the entire Earth clean of everything it knows. You know, all
Nick,
technology, all civilization.
Wouldn't World War III, in all honesty, just it would be a reset for the human race? Like, you would have a scorched earth on the surface. You'd have all these super weirdo billionaire elite sickos that would be underground that would propagate the earth when they came back up. And guess what? They would do it all over again. They'd build it all back up and have another nuclear war in the future, whoever survives. So it's something we're doomed to keep repeating until we basically take the power back, whatever means we need to do it. You know, me and Jake went into a theory that because the vast majority of people are good but they're very innocent, that you can call them the sheep or the flock of sheep, you know, sheeple if you want to be mean to them. But there's also wolves and there's also predators, and predators simply have nothing to provide at all. They're not defenders. They're consumers. These are the people that run these rings, that run horrible wars around the world, that run the drug trades. But there are wolves. We need to unleash the wolves. That's the thing. We need to allow the good men that are violent, that have families, to just simply clean house. I mean, we have to give them permission. I don't know what a society here in the U.S. that would mean, Nick. I really don't. I have no clue what that would entail. But it needs to happen, because they're not going to just sign 1 million petitions. I mean, do a ton of marches. Don't buy stuff. It doesn't matter anymore. They're beyond the realm of public opinion at this point. It's that crazy.
Yeah, man. By any means, like you said, things need to get dealt with. But you know, I truly think it could be done in a peaceful way. Again, we need time though. If people are forced into tough decisions next year in 2017, we're not ready. We're simply not. I mean, there's just too many ignorant people around this.
Right. The self-sufficiency is a real issue, Nick.
I mean, let's face it. If there was a revolution in 2017, Donald Trump would end up being the dictator. Like, that's how ignorant this country is right now. We're still a long way off before there's enough people with enough information that are educated enough. And I don't mean educated by going to college or anything, nothing against that. But I mean, knowing what the hell is going on and knowing our history and knowing the history of empires and of bad men that have done bad things, that have taken advantage of huge populations before. Until we get to that point, we're doomed for bad revolutions, and history has been rife with mostly bad revolutions. I mean, a lot of people look back at the founding fathers of the United States and look at that as some type of positive revolution, and in some ways, I would agree that it was. I mean,
but was it a progressive revolution? Because, like, if you really look back at it, it was really the only time in the world where, like, another wealthy class just kicked like the royalties' ass for their own like land and plantations, and then just kind of took the country over and then consummated their defeat of the British Empire with Manifest Destiny, which was like 10 more huge wars on top of it against the natives. So it was not what we think it was. That's what people don't get. It's like we're not some like revolutionary liberal country. We're not. We're like conservative as it gets.
It wasn't a benevolent revolution. I mean, I would argue that having a constitutional republic with many people having basic rights it's a step up from being a colony of a monarchy. Yes,
but it's like Rome again.
Exactly. I mean, in that aspect, it's good. But on the other side, it's delivered us what we have right now as well. You know, first of all, you know, many people were left out of the Constitution when this country was founded, including women's rights, black rights. Obviously, Native Americans were basically to be eradicated or whatever. A lot of people were left out. And now it's evolved into what has become similar to what Rome happened in Rome, except we don't have our, you know, technically we don't have our dictator yet, but we've turned into a huge empire just like Rome did. And therefore, I would argue that the Constitution of the United States in that aspect has been pretty much an epic failure in many ways. And, you know, we've got a violent police state. We've got mass surveillance where pretty much everybody has the potential of being spied on. We've got massive inequality. We've got a huge gap between the working class and the wealthy. I mean, there's so many different ways to look at it where the U.S. Revolution failed. I mean, a couple of the good things, like you said earlier, we have this radio show. We've got somewhat of a free press. That's good. It's good that we're able to talk and say what we're saying, and hopefully people can hear it, and hopefully they can use it to make different decisions in the future when it comes to, you know, the evolution of government and stuff like that. But, you know, in many, many ways, it's been a failure. And so we've got to evolve past this idea of that every country needs to be run as a quote unquote constitutional republic, because I mean, North Korea calls itself a republic. China calls itself the People's Republic. Russia calls itself a republic. I mean, all these countries who we think of as, oh my God, these countries are horrible. They have no freedom and that blah, 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 blah. They've all got constitutions of some sort. They're all considered republics, even if they're run by dictators. And the U.S., I mean, it's an oligarchy, but on paper, it's a republic. This idea of democratic republicanism, it really is, and I don't come out against this very often because people freak out when you say, "Oh, you can't criticize democracy; it's sacred. It's, you know, democracy is the best." No, it's actually not. Democracy has been being
tyranny of the mob.
I mean, officially, we've been practicing democracy for like over 2,000 years, and I mean, it gave us the Greek Empire, it gave us the Roman Empire, it gave us a bunch of crazy things that are pretty bad. And it's given us what's going on here in the U.S. today, which is the biggest, most dominant empire that's around right now.
A true democracy would be something you need to do on a state level. I mean, what the U.S. could progress towards would be how a state could kind of dictate its own path, and the Fed sort of start fizzling away and dissolving into things that we really truly need, which is just really like Department of Defense. And that's about it, just to make sure we stay together as a country. But like what the Fed does with overreaching, it could break down, man. It's starting to break down. I'm seeing this Cal exit. Now I'm seeing the country of Pacifica. There's a lot of sentiment to leave because people don't want the Fed ramming down their throat. So we've got to come to some sort of new bridge to a new way to get things done. I hate the word government because it means to basically dictate a man's mind or mind control, essentially. So that's what the Latin base is. So I hate that term. We've got to just come back to what it was. We need administration, but people need to come to what they need and get it and come to an agreement with society at large. We don't need government. We need admin.
Yeah, and the Constitution was initially supposed to set up a type of federation of the states, and that kind of got usurped after the Civil War. But you're right, man. I mean, people here in California, where I'm at, they don't want Trump coming in and saying, "Okay, guys, abortion is banned, and we can't have that no more, and we're gonna arrest everybody for using medical marijuana, and blah 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 blah." We don't want none of that shit, and that is not how it's supposed to work. I mean, this is supposed to be a federation where each state is a mini country and they decide their own rules, and the federal government is only there to provide for several basic needs, like you said, Department of Defense and a couple other things like that. I mean,
so you're telling me we need to become the United Federation, right, Nick?
Yeah, man. I mean, that's the next logical step if we're going to embrace a greater sense of freedom in these United States, is that we need to go back to this idea of state autonomy, and then from that point, then we can start talking about, okay, let's break it down even further to where we have county autonomy, and the counties, make their own decisions, and the state governments are only there to provide for the overarching needs. Of course, this is still in the realm of statism, but these are logical steps that we can take to start embracing a higher sense of autonomy and freedom.
As long as you're born in one of these federal whatever you want to call them, territories that you can move freely without, there should be absolutely no border patrols between any or states. Like, there should be a complete autonomy and freedom.
Exactly. So the states can compete against each other, and then if something happens in a state like California, like if, let's say, California is, okay, guys, we're banning all guns, no more guns, and I could say, okay, I'm banning myself from living in California and I'm moving to Oregon because I don't want to let go of my gun. These are logical steps we can take without saying, okay, guys, let's have a huge ass revolution, and who knows what the hell's going to happen at the end of it. We might end up with a dictator. We probably end up with a dictator, but let's just have a go at it. I don't really buy that because I don't like uncertainties and things like that. I'd rather say, okay, let's start reducing the reach of the federal government to the point where they only have their hands in a very limited part of our lives, and let our states start governing themselves. So if California wanted to have universal education, they could do it. If California wanted to have universal health care, they could do it. If California wanted to ban guns, as much as I disagree with it, they could do it. And then people in those states, they hated it, they can move, they can leave, they can move there if they liked it, this to me is a logical step, a realistic step, because all of this talk of secession, and I never thought I'd see it from people in California, even though I'm a person that personally subscribes to that stuff and does live in California. I mean, obviously the Texas secessionist movement has been big and strong for a long time, for a very long time. All this talk of secession, it's going to have to, if it gains steam, which I hope it does, there's going to be concessions that have to be made. And the states are going to have to be given much, much more autonomy unless they want the risk of civil war breaking out or states just leaving the country altogether. And I'll tell you what, they don't, as much as the rest of the country talks all kinds of shit about us here in California, that we're commies, that we're this and that we're that, we are the biggest economy in the whole country. We provide you guys with half your food. We provide you guys with all your technology, and you don't want to lose it. So sessions have to be made. Thank you all for tuning in. Anti-Media Radio, Monday through Friday, 5 days a week, same place, same time. We'll be back next week.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.
My name is S.M. Gibson.